Kwalo mhla ngubusela lomhla ekseni ngilesihlanu siphetha liviki lethu solo sikuyo inyanga eqala umnyaka inyanga yabhimbidvana ihlelo lethu ke lokuqala lisuku nalolu ikusile breakfast show sibonga nje ukuthi uhlale uthatha isikhathi sekuba nathi nalomhla ke sita ukuphakela indzaba tethu teSwati sita ubuka naleto lechamuka ngephandle kwalapha events sesibuka nemibiko lechamuka enhlanganweni yakamhlaba kwanyalo sita ubahlola imarket sita sesiyabuya ke sitfokotela indzaba tethu talapha ekhaya.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.za. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
Kwanelo muhle ubukela ikusile breakfast show kulesikhathi sidabuka nathi indzaba tethu teSiswati indvuna elitiko letekuhlela umnotfo nentfutfuko umhlonishwa Dr. Tambo Gina seyikhipheke libandla lelitawuchuba sigaba sekucala selubalo lolukhulu lweminyaka wa 2027 kanti ke lelibandla kubhekeke ukuthi licale evikini lelitako kuvakashela nje imimango kubhalisa emakhaya netakhiwo letikhona lapha eveni.
Lubalo lolukhulu pheceleti population and housing census lendiwa njalo emva kweminyaka lelishumi kanti lapha eveni laseSwatini lagcina kwendiwa ngeminyaka wa 2017 indvuna yetiko letekuhlela umnotfo nentfutfuko umhlonishwa Dr. Tambo Gina seyikhiphe libandla lebantfu labalikhulu nemashumi lamane nesitfupha 146 labayochuba sigaba sekucala selibalo lolukhulu leminyaka wa 2027 lethe indvuna lolubalo lwa 2027 lutawuphuma nenombolo yetakhiwo tetindlu letingekho esimeni lesikahle kude uhulumende akhona ehlela kahle tinhlelo takhe tentfutfuko.
Kukhona tinhlelo bakangwane lomuzi la sithuma tona ukuthi sitende njengalokuthi lemkhukhu la kuhlala khona abantu uninhabitable structures siwadi kusanganani eveni ngako ke siyaniphathisa kukhona labanye benu la labatobuka lokho nje ukuthi letindlu lengathi ngathi lihoko lela kuhlala umuntu noma kusekahle tenganani eveni sitawuyenda isample yaloko kulokuleni kwendako nyalo kona kutawuthatha isikhathi ukucetha but abakhona isample bese siyathi ukuthi leyo nkinga inganani eveni how many houses do we need to build for those people sesingabudgeta kahle ke siplane kahle.
Mabhalelo omkhulu etiko letekuhlela umnotfo nentfutfuko Kusile Mlangeni wendlulise emave kuyala kuleli bandla wabakhutsata ukuthi bachubele umsebenzi welive ngenhlonipho.
Kumcoka ke as our field officers ukuthi uma ufika ekhaya ukhombise inhlonipho. Emakhaya kakafanani. Lamanyane tinja awuthi nje uchamuka emntini webantu sowuphethe ematshe wena netagile utawushaya letinja dabo lapha hawu wakuphi lolo sashaya tinja tethu sekuvele sekonakele ke nje lobudlelwano beni kwasekucaleni so ngicela ukuthi nikucaphele ukuthi ningena kanjani na ufika ekhaya ucela abantu labadzala bayaku-attend abantu labadzala uyabachazela ukuthi ungubani ubuya kuphi nabo batakubona ngale uniform loniketwe yona
Lesigaba sekucala salolubalo sitawucala evikini lelitako mhla til-14 sihle sephethe ngenyanga yemphala komnyaka losetulu bese kuthi isigaba sesibili sona sicala ngenyanga yeNkhwekhweti kuyo umnyaka wa-2027. Lobikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza ezulwini.
Kute-ke eMaswati adle amaphilisi anathe nemithi lephephile eveni indvuna yelitiko letemphilo umhlonishwa Mduduzi Mathebula setfule libandla lelitawulawula tindzaba tekuphepha kwemithi nemaphilisi. Indvuna yethi lelibandla litawulawula imithi lengena egedeni kanye nemaphilisi langena egedeni kubuka kutsi engabe vele kuphephile yini.
Umthetho welive lobuke tindzaba temithi Medicines and Related Substances Control womnyaka wa-2016 uniketa indvuna yetiko letemphilo emandla ekubeka libandla letawengamela tindzaba temithi nemaphilisi Medicines Regulatory Authority. Indvuna yetiko letemphilo komhlonishwa Mduduzi Mathebula ngalesine ibese yetfula lelibandla.
Umsebenti walelibandla mkhulu eveni. Timphilo teMaswati tidipenda kulelibandla lesitolibeka namuhla. Ukuthi kusebenziselwe imithi nemaphilisi lephephile eveni. Baphindze basibukele lapho kuhlala khona nale mithi ukuthi kuhlala endaweni efanelekile. Leli bandla-ke selivele lisemsebentini losikhuluma lijobo selisenza yini kuyindokodo-ke ukuthi bengingaveda ukuthi kula magama kunaNomsashongo losibukele temithi eveni kule ministry yahealth. Abese kuba na Mr. Clement Hleko lobukele kosomuthi lesimthathe kulaba private. Abese kuba naSihle Gama lomsomuthi naye edikweni. Kube naNontobeko Simelane lomdokotela. Kube naBongwe Malinga lomelele umcondzisi wetempilo. Kube naGugu Sibanze lowati kabantu ngokusebenza kwemithi emtimbeni. Kube naThembi Nkosi Langamandla lomelele umcondzisi wetilwane etikweni letempilo. Kube naNgosinathi Manzini locucuthu lemmele. Kube naTyrone Jacobs lowati tibalo lotasibukela tibalo.
Lelibandla linemalunga layimfica litawuhlala ehhovisi iminyaka lesihlanu kanti kubheke ukuthi lihlangane likhethe sihlalo nelisekela lasihlalo. Kubekwa kwalelibandla ngiletinye tinhlelo tichutshwa ngilo litiko letemphilo tekuvala tikhebesi letikhona kulolu hlangothi letemphilo delive. Lobikako nguSamkelisiwe Khoza eMbabane.
Litiko letekulima selitfule umbiko kwekuthi isifo semlomo nemasondvo sesibhedvuke sefika kaZombodze emuva. Mabhalane omkhulu etiko letekulima Sydney Simelane uthi kusahlolisiswa ukuthi leli gciwane lingulelinye lalawa lamatsatfu lakhona eveni lokungu SAT1, SAT2 kanye na SAT3. Simelane bekakhuluma uma achaza ngesimo salokubhedvuka kwalesifo lapha eveni netinhlelo letikhona tekulwa naso.
Litiko letekulima lamemetela kubhedvuka kwesifo semlomo nemasondvo mhla ka-12 Meyi 2025 esifundzeni saseshiselweni. Kwathi kusebuke loko saphindze-ke savela nasesifundzeni saselibonjeni lapho kwavela lihlobo loluhlukile leligciwane. Mabhalane lomkhulu etiko letekulima Sydney Simelane uthi-ke tinhlobo temagciwane te-FMD letikhona lapha eveni tintsatfu kwamanje.
La kaZombodze emva sekuvele inkinga nakhona. Sesingenile lesifo. Nasingena we are realizing ukuthi nakhona kude connection nale emkhwakhweni. Idolo I was on the ground ngithathe nje a team yabo dokotela nabo animal health inspector nabo madibane saya khona esayithini sawutibukela nje lokuthi yini lelenda kusibe vulnerable kangaka. Kude ema-international boundaries lama fences ekuvala. Letinkomo tisuka nje ngale emaveni abomakhelwane tingene ngala ngakithi netangala ngakithi tisuke tiye ngale emaveni abomakhelwane. Lesifo ke sithathelana kalula lesi ngoba inkomo nayidle etshani kanye nalesifo bese kufika lenye idle la bekudlale khona noma kanjani selithethe lelo gciwane. Ngiko-ke leli esikubonile ukuthi-ke kufuna ukuthi sesikuzame sikuphuthume sikwente. Kuleli-ke lesilibonako le kaZombodze emva, sihambile safika sabuka sisetawungena ku-process nakhona yoku-check-a ukuthi solo ngiyo yini le variant noma mhlawumbe seyehlukile. But it is very likely ukuthi kungaba ngulo SARS-2 ngoba vele solo kuseshiselweni.
Mabalelo omkhulu uthi indzaba yekubabete kwabodaladi labahlukanisa imincele ngiyona ibhebhetela kwanza kwalesifo. Litiko-ke selincume ukuthi lijove tonke tinkhomo lokuyintfo ledzinga ukuthi ihlelwe kahle ngilabo labafanele. Kantsi-ke uhulumende udzinga imali lenganga-62 million emalangeni kuhlangabeta lolu hlelo lekujova imfuyo. Kubika Sondomlangeni, Nasikhumbuzo Dlamini, eMbabane.
Kanti-ke umkhankaso wekujova tonke tinkhomo ukutivikelisa kuso lesifo lekusifo semlomo nemasondvo kutawenta ukuthi live lingakhoni-ke kutsengisa inyama ngephandle kwelive ngoba simo selive sitawutsi FMD free with vaccination. Lokhu kuvetwe ngumabhalane lomkhulu etiko letekulima Sydney Simelane ngeluhlelo lwekujovela sifo semlomo nemasondvo. Kanti-ke sichubeka nato tindzaba ekusithekeni kwentima esikhatsini la khona bantfu labanengi basekhatsi nekhatsi nebutfongo tinswelaboya letine tihlasele likhaya ezulwini tantshontsha imphahla lengabita imali lengu-41,800 emalangeni. Umbiko wemaphoyisa uveta kutsi labasolwa labane bafike kuleli khaya ngalesibili nga-1:45 ebusuku. Kanti-ke letigebengu lebekatse tihlome ngemikhwa kutsiwa ticale tabamba gatsi waleli khaya egedeni tamshaya tatsi-ke naticetsa lapho tabe setihamba naye tiya naye endlini tamphocelela kutsi angcongcotse abavuse. Kutsiwa letinswelaboya tativeta njengemaphoyisa letekutawukwenta luphenyo tsite kuleli khaya. Emaphoyisa atsi letigebengu tesabisa bantfwana bakulela khaya kutsi bavule umnyango. Bantfwana batsi ngekuvula umnyango letinswelaboya tabaphocelela kutsi babakhombise likamero lababe wabo. Kube ngilapho khona-ke letigebengu titfola khona bomahlale-ekhukhwini labane. Letigebengu tatsatsa labo mahlale-ekhukhwini tase tigcwala tiganga. Kanti-ke emaphoyisa kungumanje atifunisa kwenyalitsi letigebengu letentelwa kucala. Futsi-ke sekacele nesive emaphoyisa kwekutsi longaba nelwati ekutsenini bobani lalabendela kucala lobu abatsinze wona emaphoyisa enombolweni yenhlabamkhosi letsi 999 noma 9999. Chubeka nato tindzaba imikhono yomithathu yahulumende ibonakala ikhuluma ngavilinye ekutsenini kwebiwa kwentsambo yelitfusi kusihlava lesibi lesidzinga kususwa etimpandzeni taso. Kongumanje inkantolo yamanje yasesiteki inikete basolwa lababili imvume yekutokela ngephandle kuphela nje uma ngabe bangababhadala imali lengetulu kwa-54,000 emalangeni. Labasolwa baboshelwe tinsolo tekweba intsambo yelitfusi lengabita imali lengu-100,000 emalangeni. Kanti-ke indzaba yekulimala kwemnotfo welive ngekwechiwa kwentsambo yelitfusi seyikhulunyiwe yakhulunywa kakhulu nguhulumende kanye nasephalamende.
Siboniso Mndzebele wendzawo yakadvokolwako akanye nankosinaye Gametse wase-Ondiyaneni bekatse bavele embi kwamanje wenkantolo yasesiteki Vincent Hlabathi lapho khona bethweswe licala lekweba intsambo yelitfusi lelinganiselwa ku-100,000 emalangeni. Inkantolo isekhute ngemavili acinile lesento salamadvodza yaveta nekutsi bucala balolu hlobo buluhluphu eveni kantsi isisindo sabo sikhulu kakhulu. Inkantolo-ke ibaphinzisele esitokisini kute kube ngumhla til-12 kule nyanga lesetulu la khona liyawuchubeka nekutekwa lelicala. Babese bafaka sicelo sebheyili. Inkantolo yayenta yaba nguhafu yalemphahla lelahlekile yaba ngu-54,783 wemalangeni umuntu amunye. Kubika Thembelihle Magutshwa esiteki.
Sichubeka nato tindzaba Inkantolo yasesibheke ithi la khona kungasekho luthando abantu abahlukane ngekuthula bangade bafike esigabeni la khona bashayana ngoba lokho ngiko lokholela ekubulalaneni kwetithanzani lesebukhungethe live lonke la kaNgwane. La nkantolo beyikhuluma uma iyala buhle Khanyile loneminyaka lengu-36 lowethweswe kelicala lekushaya umkakhe abuye amesabise athembise nekumgeca ngabhusha.
Buhle Khanyile wekudzabuka ensangweni ngaphansi kwesikhulu umsutfu kabekatse avele embi kwamantshi wenkantolo yasesibhiki ngoSengiphile Maseko ngalesithathu ethweswe licala lekuhlukubeta umkakhe ethandazile ethwala ngekumshaya amesabise aphindze amgijimise ngacelemba. Khanyile-ke watise inkantolo ukuthi lokhu wakwendisa tshwala kodwa-ke ifisile inkantolo kwati ukuthi engabe akabuyekeli ngani wase uyaphendvula Khanyile wathi njalo ngaboLwesine nangoLwesihlanu evikini umtimba wakhe uyamhlupha umkhanukise bona tshwala ngako akatendi lokunatsa wendiwa ngolesimo. Inkantolo-ke isekhute ngemavila acinile lesento saKhanyile yase yameyala ukuthi njengoba live lihlaselwe kwanza kwebucala lakhona titsandzani utfola setibulalene tento letifana naleti ngito letibhebhetela lomkhuba ngako akakugweme. Ichubeke yasho inkantolo ukuthi nakeva ukuthi luthando seluphelile akahlukane nalomkakhe kunalokuthi amoshaye. Inkantolo-ke ibese imugweba iminyaka lemibili ejele noma-ke abhadale inhlawulo ya-2000 emalangeni. Kulandzela kutsi umkakhe umbekwacala akhale ngekuthi sekumahlandla avika bogebhu njalo inganatsa indvodza yakhe. Umshushisi kuleli cala-ke ngesicelo saso simangalo ubese ufaka sicelo ngekusebentisa sicephu 83 semtsetfo lobuke kuphilisana emakhaya wacela kutsi inkantolo ikhiphe isijubo lesithi lalababili abahlalisane ngekuthula ngaso sonke isikhatsi. Kubika Thabiso Maphanga enkantolo kamantshi esibhiki.
Etindzabeni temidlalo Phiwa Dlamini lobekakatse adlalela licembu le-Young Buffaloes lenyalo sadlalela le-Mbabane Swallows uthi uma ngalitfola litfuba adlale kuMbabane Derby kanye neMbabane Highlanders kukhona la ngakwenda lokungasita licembu le-Mbabane Swallows ukuthi likhone kuncoba lo mdlalo. Dlamini bekakhuluma ngesikhathi lamacembu atilolonga ngaphambi kokuthi atfolane emdlalweni we-MTN Premier League lotawubangela isondvo lesiya kulo. Umdlalo utawube usakatwa bukhoma lapha ka-Eswatini TV.
La macembu lamabili lidolobha leMbabane asalungiselela umdlalo lomkhulu ngempelasonto licembu leMbabane Swallows ligcina limthola umdlali Phiwa Dlamini kanti yena Dlamini uthi ngaphandle kwekuthi angasita yona iMbabane Swallows ukuthi incobe lo mdlalo wabo neMbabane Highlanders emagoli la10 angawashaya kusuka nyalo kude kuphele isizini lesetulu.
Ngathi lokuthi ngathini cause ngiwadlalile ama-derby 4 seasons but lena ihlukile nalebe siwadlala thini angathi lokuthi ngathini ngiyo but ngabe lithuba ngidalithola ngiyathembisa ukuthi khona lengitokwenda nami. I think ngithena ngibuka i-chart into lidawo ngathi una 10 but ngiyathembisa ukuthi ngamshaya u10 le second round.
Abaphathi balamacembu lamabili lokungu-Newman Philiso kanye naSiphamandla Maseko bathi basayiwa kulomdlalo badlali bonke bakhomba kudimisela.
Previous lena it's a derby lokusho ukuthi wonke umuntu utawufuna ukuthi ubonakalise esiveni ukuthi ongubani yena njalo kunathi ndikahle neHighlander bengendi kahle ngabathi kutaba ngumdlalo lomuhle wonke umuntu abatimisela.
So ngicabanga everyone lokhona la team is motivated. Some of us bathe bacala kudlala iMbabane Derby so wonke umuntu ufuna kwakhala igama lakhe lelanga la ngelisonto. So ngicabanga good motivation lengana leqhamuka lethingeka from management so individually player by player ngicabanga uyathi simelendene ngeweekend.
Caleb Ngwenya longumceceshi weMbabane Swallows uthi kulomdlalo akuwinge ukuthi licembu belidlala kanjani emidlalweni leyengcile. Kanti Ernest Mavuso weMbabane Highlanders uthi uyethemba ukuthi badlali lekubheka ukuthi babasayine batodlala inzima lenkulu kulomdlalo.
It's true. We were, especially Tin, I can only talk about us. We are in a serious rebuilding phase of our team. And that is why I can ask everybody, our fans, to be patient with the boys.
Cha siyalungiselela lana njengalokhu nibona nje sisemkhathini nemkhankaso igame lenkulu lena even it's ingasi treat with all the respect le deserve because sidlala ne team lesiyatiko ukuthi ingodi kangakanani. On a good day sesibonile ilimata labanyenti, so we're trying to be on the same side.
Lo mdlalo odlalwa ngempelasonto enkundleni yasemavuso ufika nje ngesikhathi lapho khona kuvuleke isikhathi sekuthenga nekuthengiswa kwabadlali lokungenteka abathanzi bebhola bababone. Lo mdlalo utabusakata bukhoma kumsakato Eswatini TV ngalo lisonto. Lobikako uLinda Dlamini eMbabane.
Sitaphetsa kanjalo nzabatethu teswati sitaba hlola emakethe hlala nathi sitabuya masinyane.
When you choose your adventures, you do so with an open heart and a desire for the unexpected. You embark on journeys to discover new worlds full of wonder. You choose a path to awaken your senses, a world to make you look up and realize just how inspiring this life can be. Arrive and awaken your heart. Explore life in ways only thought possible in your dreams. Discover just how far you go to expand your understanding of life's greatest mysteries. There's just one place on this planet with so much to offer. Now is the time for you to have the royal experience.
Welcome back. Our international stories now. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt has stated that using the U.S. military to acquire Greenland is always an option. It comes after European leaders issued a joint statement on Greenland after the United States president said the United States needed the semi-autonomous region from a national security standpoint.
After forcibly removing Nicolas Maduro from Caracas over the weekend, US President Donald Trump has shifted his target, again threatening to annex Greenland. On Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that he may use the US military.
President Trump has made it well known that acquiring Greenland is a national security priority of the United States, and it's vital to deter our adversaries in the Arctic region. The president and his team are discussing a range of options to pursue this important foreign policy goal, and of course, utilizing the U.S. military is always an option at the commander-in-chief's disposal.
Defence and foreign policy in the semi-autonomous territory remain in the hands of Denmark, a NATO member. This means Greenland too falls under the protection of the military alliance. For Denmark's Prime Minister, the US threatening a fellow ally has far-reaching consequences for NATO. Issuing a joint statement, European leaders have attempted to show a united front to counter Donald Trump's renewed push for Greenland. As he attended Ukraine peace talks in Paris, French President Emmanuel Macron sought to play down the issue.
I cannot imagine a scenario in which the US would violate Danish sovereignty. That is unthinkable. I cannot believe that they'd betray their commitments regarding Greenland.
Denmark and Greenland have requested a meeting with US Secretary of State Marco Rubio.
I have had a conversation with my Greenlandic colleagues over the last few days, and we have agreed that it seems that the time has come for us to reach out for a meeting with our American counterpart, the US Secretary of State, So we have requested that.
Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal has reported that US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said that administration threats against Greenland did not indicate an imminent invasion and that the goal is to buy the island from Denmark.
In another story, Maduro supporters protest in Caracas as interim leader determined to remain in control here. The interim Venezuelan president, Delcy Rodriguez, is determined to remain head of state after the capture of Nicolas Maduro by the United States forces. Now, she maintains that no foreign agency rules the country, even as President Donald Trump announces Caracas will be turning over millions of barrels of oil to the United States. Meanwhile, Maduro's supporters demonstrated in the streets of Caracas on behalf of the deposed president.
Supporters of Nicolas Maduro turn out en masse in the streets of Caracas, calling for the release of the Venezuelan president and his wife after their abduction by the United States. Among the protesters, Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello, who has also been indicted in the case against Maduro.
The imperialist knows that it has a prisoner of war on its territory, kidnapped here where the majority of Venezuelans elected him to be the constitutional president of our homeland. The Bolivarian revolution will move on forward, and they are going to have to return Nicolas and Cilia to us.
Delcy Rodriguez, Maduro's former vice president, who has been sworn in as interim head of state, maintained in a televised address she was in control of the country despite the threats of Donald Trump, who wants access to Venezuela's oil.
The Venezuelan government rules our country, no one else. There is no external agent governing Venezuela.
At the Colombian border, foreign journalists are still unable to enter Venezuela. Among Venezuelans willing to talk, there were mixed feelings about last weekend's events.
I can say it now because I've already crossed the border, yet we still find it hard to believe. We know, we have the conviction that now something positive is going to happen for our country.
We are kind of in shock, right? Something that really shouldn't have happened. It should never have happened like this, whatever the reason.
A Maduro loyalist, but also known for her pragmatism, Delcy Rodriguez has called for a fair and respectful relationship with Washington. Donald Trump, for his part, announced on Tuesday the delivery of between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil to the US by the Venezuelan government.
We look at a Congolese supporter now who becomes AFCON icon as he pays tribute to country's first prime minister. Well, supporters from across Africa have gathered in Morocco to watch their national team compete in the Africa Cup of Nations, and one has since become an icon. He stood like a statue at every game DR Congo played before their elimination, and the pose is a tribute to DR Congo's first prime minister, who was assassinated in 1961.
He doesn't chant, he doesn't jump, he doesn't wave a flag, and yet his image has become one of the most unforgettable of his Africa Cup of Nations. Across Africa and around the world, fans have embraced a different kind of hero, not from the pitch, but from the stands. Meet Michel Boladinga, known simply as Lumumba. At every match of the DRC, Michel stood like a statue. His performance is more than fandom. It's a tribute to Patrice Lumumba, the first prime minister of an independent Congo, a leader assassinated in 1961. Michel Kuka Boladinga has become an iconic figure among the fans.
I don't know where the inspiration came from, but he really does look like Lumumba. And when he joined the football club, there were also people who motivated him and pushed him on.
Lumumba is our hero. It is thanks to him that the DRC became independent. It is thanks to Lumumba.
For 90 minutes, sometimes more, one man became a symbol of courage, remembrance, and identity.
A United States Immigration and Customs Enforcement ICE officer shot and killed a woman during a traffic stop in Minneapolis, triggering protests and a furious backlash from city and state leaders who condemned the federal immigration crackdown as reckless and destabilizing.
Protests on the streets of Minnesota after a new shooting in a politically divided America. A US Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer shot and killed a 37-year-old woman in her vehicle in Minneapolis on Wednesday.
To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully, as you always do. We can't give them what they want.
The shooting comes amid an immigration crackdown in the city, one of many to see increased ICE presence under the Trump administration. The city's mayor wasn't pulling punches.
This was an agent recklessly using power that resulted in somebody dying, getting killed. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis. We do not want you here. Your stated reason for being in this city is to create some kind of safety, and you are doing exactly the opposite.
US President Donald Trump and his administration are defending the officer. Kristi Noem, US Homeland Security Secretary, said the deceased woman's actions prior to the shooting were domestic terrorism.
Secretary Noem, Mayor Fry called the claims of self-defense BS. How do you respond to that?
I say that he doesn't know what he's talking about. It's very clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training.
The administration was clear that ICE's operations in the city would continue. That's unlikely to quell the protests or prevent further clashes between officers and demonstrators who want them gone.
All right, Donald Trump says doubts NATO would be there for U.S. if needed. That is U.S. President Donald Trump, whose renewed threats to seize Greenland from NATO member Denmark have rattled the transatlantic alliance, I beg your pardon, who said Wednesday he doubted allies would be there for us if we really needed them.
There likely won't be boots on the ground in Greenland, according to U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson. After White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said military action in the semi-autonomous territory was on the table, Johnson dismissed the statement Wednesday.
I don't think anybody's talking about using military force in Greenland. They're looking at diplomatic channels. On all
the White House said they're keeping military options there open.
The U.S. always has military options for everything.
The White House has since said that diplomacy is its first option, though it is open to all others. President Donald Trump also appears to be contradicting himself. Despite threats to take over Greenland, a NATO ally, he affirmed lasting U.S. support for the military alliance in a Truth Social post Wednesday.
I doubt NATO will be there for us if we really need them. We will always be there for NATO, even if they won't be there for us.
Greenland falls under the protection of NATO since its defense and foreign policy remain in the hands of Denmark, a member of the alliance. Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has cautioned that Trump taking over the territory will bring an end to NATO. Danish officials are set to meet next week for talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who recently said Trump plans to buy Greenland rather than invade the island.
I'll be meeting with them next week. We'll have those conversations with them then.
Does the U.S. intend to buy Greenland? Can you clarify your comments to lawmakers this week?
Well, that's always been the president's intent from the very beginning. He said it very early on. I mean, this is not new. He talked about it in his first term.
The plan to buy Greenland has already been strongly rejected by politicians in both Greenland and Denmark, who say the territory is not for sale.
Well, the United States has cut the number of recommended vaccines for children, and the U.S. there has dropped federal guidance of recommending several vaccines for all children effective immediately. Now, the move is one of several vaccine changes made by the Trump administration under Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has long advocated against vaccines.
The flu, meningitis, hepatitis A and B. The U.S. is no longer guiding all children to get vaccinated against these diseases. On Monday, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, reduced the number of vaccines advised for children from 17 to 11. The drop shots are now only recommended for children who are deemed high risk or have been advised by a doctor. Experts warn the changes could add confusion for parents and be harmful to children's health.
I am very concerned. Vaccines have played such a big role in enhancing the health of our population. And I am very concerned that we may see resurgences of some of these diseases that could lead to severe health consequences.
The change, requested by President Donald Trump in December, was long desired by Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He said the cuts will protect children and rebuild trust in public health. However, many health professionals see the change as promoting Kennedy's personal medical skepticism after he fired the entire CDC Vaccine Advisory Committee last June.
This has never happened in the United States. This administration has decided that they think they know better than the independent science-based experts that made recommendations for vaccination of our children for over 50 years.
As the new federal guidance is taking effect, major medical organizations have filed a lawsuit challenging vaccine policies adopted under Kennedy, which they argue will lower immunization rates.
All right, with talks around Ukraine's security ongoing in Paris, Russian attacks in Ukraine continue. In the city of Kherson, close to the border with Russia, Ukrainians are constantly under threat of drone attacks. To protect them, giant nets have been tied to trees and spread out over streets. Although it doesn't always work, it makes life seem a bit safer.
The market in Kherson is under huge nets. The inhabitants of this town do their shopping protected by this giant mesh above their heads. We're in what Ukrainians call the death zone, a neighbourhood that's been hit by Russian drones just 2.5 kilometres from the front line. This farmer is selling her cheese, hoping she's safe.
It improves our situation because, you know, here Russian drones are a constant threat above us. So my heart feels a little better with that. Yes, really.
Yes, really, it reassures me. And if it saves just one life, that's already a lot.
But the nets don't stop the fear. The market is suddenly under artillery fire. These Ukrainians, terrified, know the mesh is no match for the shells. She prays and will be safe as long as she does. 2 people killed 500 metres from these women at that very moment. Moments of great tension and then calm under the nets. The buses are also under these nets, as are the bus stops. These protective nets are now being targeted by the Russians. Here, an incendiary drone is burning a net installed by the Ukrainians. Kyiv soldiers also have this technology to destroy enemy defences. In this box under the drone is a flammable substance.
This thing's flying 5 minutes. During the 5 minutes flying close to the net, it can fly around 1 kilometer and destroy 1 kilometer of the net.
These nets are vulnerable and must be constantly maintained. These were sent by French fishermen from Saint-Nazaire, a town twinned with Kherson. These workers cut branches so they don't fall into the netting. Highly visible from the sky, they must work above the nets and are very vulnerable to being targeted by enemy drones. They also search for anti-personnel mines.
The nets not only protect against drones, they also stop landmines launched from the sky. The mesh prevents them from landing on the street.
In this photo, one of those mutilating landmines was stopped in time.
The United States government should be conducting itself with strength, force, and power. That is according to senior White House aide Stephen Miller. The Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy is part of Trump's inner circle, oversees a staff of 40 people, and he is Homeland Security Advisor. Who is Stephen Miller, and how did he rise to such prominent positions?
Stephen Miller has Donald Trump's ear. The 40-year-old speaks with the US president on a daily basis, is one of the most influential figures in his inner circle, and his hard right agenda is becoming bolder. In the last week alone, The Deputy Chief of Staff has publicly championed Trump running Venezuela and its oil, and has asserted that the Danish territory of Greenland belongs to the United States. Force, he told CNN, is key to power.
You can talk all you want about international niceties and everything else, but we live in a world, in the real world, Jake, that is governed by strength, that is governed by force, that is governed by power.
Born in 1985 in Santa Monica, California, Miller gained attention as a provocative conservative voice at his left-leaning high school and college, before working for the then GOP Senator Jeff Sessions. His hardline stance on immigration caught Trump's attention during the 2016 election campaign, for which he helped craft now famous speeches.
They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're rapists.
Miller is a rare advisor who served all 4 years of the president's first term. He was the driving force behind the travel ban and the push to build a border wall with Mexico. Since then, his influence has grown, and he is widely credited as the architect behind this administration's anti-immigration crackdown. In May last year, he even ordered ICE officials to arrest 3,000 people per day. He is also acting in service of Trump's foreign policy ambitions, which, according to the New York Times, so far resemble imperialistic designs to exploit less powerful, resource-rich countries and territories the world over. The question for critics, however, is whether the pair are politically posturing, blatantly stating their true ambitions, or a combination of both.
All right, we'll go for a quick ad break now, and we'll be back with Bloomberg.
Eswatini TV has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Eswatini Communications Commission. We are committed to reporting news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that does not amount to hate speech or the description of gratuitous violence or explicit sex. For any complaints of our programming, please contact us on 2411-9600 or email info@eswatinitv.co.sz. You can also contact the Eswatini Communications Commission on 2406-7000 or write a letter to ECCOM on PO Box 7811 Mbabane. Email address is info@ecom.org.sz.
All right, welcome back. We look at this report now from Bloomberg, which speaks to one of the most earthquake-prone regions on Earth, where the Tibetan Plateau meets the Himalayas.
For decades, the Three Gorges Dam has stood as a symbol of China's engineering might. A project so vast that NASA said it measurably altered the Earth's rotation, making days 0.06 microseconds longer. The Three Gorges Dam generates more electricity than any other power plant on Earth, enough to light up more than 70 million homes a year.
But on the edge of the Himalayas, China is planning something even more ambitious, on a river you may never have heard of.
This is the project of a century.
The most impressive power generation system ever envisioned.
It's the hydropower equivalent of a mission to Mars.
But to build it, China must tunnel through mountains that are still rising in one of the most earthquake-prone places on the planet. And that's not all. What happens here could affect hundreds of millions of lives downstream in neighboring India and Bangladesh, risking new tensions over water. The engineering is unprecedented. So are the stakes.
There is like this stark beauty. It was called the roof of the world because it's the highest part of the world.
From the glacial melt here, the Yarlung-Sangpo River flows over 1,000 kilometers east along the edge of the Tibetan Plateau, before performing what many consider a geological miracle at a location known as the Great Bend, right where the plateau meets the Himalayas.
It does this mad turn, so it stops flowing east and does a big hook and starts coming back and flowing west.
About a 180-degree bend where the river drops about 2,000 meters in elevation in just a 200-kilometer period. Then the river leaves China, goes into India, and there it's known as the Brahmaputra. And then it empties out in the Bay of Bengal.
亚夏水电工程体量大、周期长、影响远。
But it's back at the Great Bend where construction of the Yasha, or Lower Yarlung hydropower project, officially began in July 2025. It's a place so remote, a road only reached it in 2013.
The gorge of the Great Bend is the biggest canyon in the world. It's literally 3 times deeper and a little bit longer than the Grand Canyon in Arizona.
It's this natural drop, the world's steepest and deepest, that also gives the plateau its greatest hydropower potential. Those following the project say China's ambition is not just to tap this power, but to utterly dominate it.
The energy generation from this project will break records in many different dimensions. It will be by far the world's largest individual source of energy, 60 gigawatts of installed capacity.
The Chinese government has said that this will generate about 300 billion kilowatt hours a year. That's more than the UK uses an entire year. It's also about 3 times more than the Three Gorges generates.
With little known officially about the project, including the construction timeline, analysts outside China have had to rely on social media, state television, and satellite images to piece together its design.
Not so long ago, an article was published in Nature, one of the premier peer-reviewed academic journals, that roughly describes the project as a diversion project.
Unlike a traditional walled dam, observers believe this one would be made up of a series of hydropower stations along the river. Theories vary, but some outside experts suggest there would be one upstream dam with a large reservoir to regulate the water flow. This would be followed by a second smaller dam at the top of the gorge, where water would be diverted from the Great Bend through the mountains via a number of underground tunnels and turbines, before potentially entering another smaller re-regulation dam at the bottom of the gorge. This could stabilize the flow before the river continues downstream into India.
This will be quite an engineering feat. After all, you're literally reconstructing a whole river underground. The volume of water that will be diverted here will be similar to the discharge of a medium-sized river, such as the Rhine in Europe.
It's a concept already tested at the Jinping dams, where engineers diverted the river through the mountains.
But what is really novel about this project is just its sheer scale, where many engineers would have probably not believed that building such a project in such a remote location would be even possible.
The government announced the project would cost 1.2 trillion yuan. That's about 167 billion US dollars. And that compares to the Three Gorges when it was built, completed back in the 2000s. It ended up at a cost of about $37 billion. So this is 4 to 5 times as much as that.
But experts say for China, this project is not just about generating power. It's a core tenet of its national economic strategy.
China is an engineering state, and one of the things that having an engineering society in China has done is that it's a government that likes to build its way out of problems.
The dam, to some extent, is an extension of China's bias towards production, towards investment, but it comes at a very interesting time. China is striving to make this transition from investment to consumption-based growth. So the dam at this point would provide a critical demand boost at a time when consumption and investment has been weak.
It's a project that promises an economic jolt for sectors like construction, cement, and steel.
When the project was announced, it rippled through the economy. Companies like Power Construction Corp of China, China Engineering Corp, Huaxin Cement, their share prices all surged.
But at another level, the dam will also enable China to produce more renewable energy and help that green transition.
With a target of net zero emissions by 2060, China has said the project could cut 300 million tons of carbon emissions a year by replacing fossil fuel power. It's also about energy security, generating more power domestically as demand surges for energy-hungry tech. But building this record-shattering mega-project in one of the most remote and geologically unstable regions on Earth tests the boundaries of modern engineering.
In order to build a dam like this, you're dealing with intense energies and intense altitudes. Landslides, freezing, malfunctioning equipment, people falling off the side of mountains. They are building this massive project on a site where 6 tectonic plates connect up.
That makes this one of the world's most earthquake-prone regions. In fact, in 1950, a magnitude 8.6 earthquake, one of the largest ever recorded in human history, occurred in the area.
For the last 40 years, China has developed the best hydropower engineers in the world by far. They're not magicians, and they can't stop tectonic plates, and they can't stop earthquakes. So that's a massive danger. And even if the earthquake doesn't happen, these type of projects tend to have slow disasters happen within them. So they seep plastic and concrete into the surrounding environment, and that changes the entire environment of that place slowly over time.
The International Campaign for Tibet also warns that dam projects frequently displace thousands from ancestral lands and sever traditional livelihoods with little consultation or support. The Three Gorges project, which required the forcible relocation of 1.3 million people from a much more heavily populated region, submerged large sections of the river valley, damaging habitats for many endemic species. China has done this before. Over the last 2 decades, China's 12 dams along the Mekong have reshaped the river and the lives that depend on it downstream.
The Mekong runs about 4,500 kilometers from the Tibetan Plateau in China through Myanmar, Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam. This river is the lifeblood of people for those countries. Tens of millions of people rely on natural resources that come right out of the river. China doesn't share information on its dam building with the downstream countries of the Mekong. It doesn't let the countries know the designs of the dams, how they're going to be operated when ground breaks, when the reservoirs start to fill, let alone how they're operating in real time.
Those who study the river say this has left communities in the dark and unable to rely on the river's seasonal floods and droughts.
The Mekong is mighty because of its seasonal flood pulse. And this flood pulse drives the Mekong's fishery, it drives the agricultural production. What dams do is reduce the peak. At times, they can reduce the peak downstream by 20%, 2,000 kilometers away.
But in areas closer to the dam, like here in northern Thailand, those fluctuations are felt even more acutely. In the dry season, the pattern reverses. Water release for hydropower can push the river levels 3 times higher than normal. As a result, environmentalists say the ecology of the river has been disrupted and the reproductive cycles of the fish and birds upended. What were once thriving fishing villages are now diminished.
โอ้ถ้าอู้ถึงเขื่อนเนาะเมื่อก่อนนี้มันน้ำมันปกติแต่เดี๋ยวนี้มันน้ำบ่ปกติละขึ้นลงไข่ม้าก็ม้าไข่แห้งก็แห้งไข่ขึ้นก็ขึ้นมันเลยทำให้ปลาผลกระทบเรื่องปลาเรื่องหาปลาหากินนี่ยากเลยเดี๋ยวนี้น่ะปลาก็บ่ค่อยมีหาได้ก็บ่ได้ขายอย่างนี้ผลกระทบหนักทำมาหากินแล้วก็ยังก็ยากแล้วก็ปลาน้ำก็
People there have been suffering for years. They lose their livestock, they lose their equipment, they lose their gardens and farms when these sudden pulses of water come through.
It's the same lack of data and transparency that has fueled concern downstream from the lower Yarlung hydropower project in India and Bangladesh. While India's Brahmaputra River is fed by other tributaries too, experts say nearly 40% of its fertile sediment comes from the Yarlung Sangpo's gorge, sustaining millions of lives and livelihoods.
Both countries have come to China and said that they want more information about it. They want to know what the downstream effects are going to be. And they're wanting, more than anything else, assurances that the downstream flow of the river that turns into the Brahmaputra won't be too impacted by this hydropower project.
The border here has long been disputed, and reports suggest officials in New Delhi fear Beijing could weaponize the water, controlling it for political leverage.
The Chinese government's counter to concerns from India, Bangladesh, and others has been that the same amount of river coming out of the canyon now will be coming out of it after it's done, and there won't be huge retention dams that could allow them to hold back water in the case of some sort of geopolitical conflict in the future.
中方修建雅鲁藏布江下游水电工程，经过严谨、科学论证，不会对下游国家生态环境、地质、水资源权益造成不良影响。
But still, tensions remain. India is countering China with the construction of its own megadam on the upper Siang, 90 kilometers below the border, even as it faces local resistance and environmental scrutiny.
Without knowledge exchange and cooperation across that border, then it's really easy to play on people's fears.
And what I think it's really important is that these decisions are made on quantifiable, open and objective data that enable us international scientists, but also importantly people whose livelihoods are at stake in that river basin actually have a say. The objective of this discussion here is not to vilify China or to basically put this project into a bad light. Indeed, it would have a major impact and major benefit for China's target to become more carbon neutral, which would have major implications for the global climate.
If China can pull this off, then it's a statement to the rest of the world to say, we're reshaping rivers, we're creating clean energy, we're providing our economy and companies with infinite clean energy that it can use to build the economy of the future.
Kwalomuhle sibonga usuhleli nasi nalomhla ehlelweni sethembe ukuthi utawuba nemphela sonfo lenhle kakhulu sethembe mabutho emajaha tawukhona nawo gobe emadvolo athi kuphumula kulandzele phela ukuthi besolo sigitsa yona incwala lokungumkhosi lomqwa kakhulu eveni lethu singemaswati liphinde nje kube ngumthandazo wethu singemaswati siphetha lihlelo lethu ke lamhla sethemba ukuthi indawo phindze nibe nathi kuleli viki lelilandzelako nibe nemphela sonfo lenhle nisale kahle.